Sally McManus, were the income support measures announced by the federal government and New South Wales yesterday enough?
Well, I'd say this. We used to have a system and it was called JobKeeper, and that was about keeping jobs. And so the problem with what was announced yesterday are two things. It's much less than what JobKeeper was. The original JobKeeper was $750 a week. This is $600. $750 is around the minimum wage. And secondly, it doesn't guarantee that your job's going to be kept. And so that's, the main point of these is to save jobs during a pandemic. I don't understand why they haven't stuck with something that everyone knew, that meant that people were connected to their jobs, that knew that at least it was the minimum wage, even if people had to suffer that pay cut. Instead, they've gone with something that's actually confusing. It leaves it up to individual workers to go sort it out with Centrelink. It severs the relationship between the employer and the employee. And for all those reasons too, with the payroll announcement, I just reckon that's open for rorts as well.
Well, the federal government has justified changing the system from the disaster payments it offered to Victoria a couple of weeks ago to this system on the basis that it's obviously going to be a much more extended lockdown. Does it make sense in that way?
I think that there's politics involved in this, and I know that I remember the 2-week lockdown in Melbourne after JobKeeper. It was the first one after JobKeeper had ended. And all of us pushed so hard to get support because the pandemic's not over. So you've got to not have the barista in Melbourne or in Sydney, the ones paying the price for it. And eventually we got something in the second week. So I know that a lot of people in Victoria will feel pretty frustrated that, it's New South Wales that has finally sort of come up with something, albeit still pretty inadequate. So I do understand that anger. I think a lot of Melburnians in particular feel as though that they've been abandoned last year and that really they haven't cared so much about people in Melbourne this year. So I think that's the reason why people are angry.
And what are the economic shock effects of those gaps in income? I mean, obviously it hurts individuals, but what sort of dent has it had down in Melbourne on confidence?
Well, you've got to understand that, when we had JobKeeper, you knew how much you were going to get and you knew your job was going to be there. So even if there had to be a lockdown, people had a level of comfort and security that their job would be secure, and also they knew the amount of money that they'd have for that period of time. And it's not really talked about, but we look at the recovery after lockdowns, and all the economists have been saying we didn't expect it. Look at it, it's a V-shaped recovery, everything's bounced back. Well, that's because people were still in their jobs, and that's because they were getting at least adequate support so that they could go out and spend. The impact of severing that relationship, letting a whole lot of casuals go who lost their jobs before the 13th of July, which is what's happened, is going to be a much harsher thing, and that's really unfortunate. We can't afford that to happen in our biggest city.
Talkback callers in Melbourne today seemed very angry about the fact that Sydney-siders were getting more money than they had got when they went to the last lockdown. And they don't seem to be appeased by the Prime Minister's argument that, in fact, Melbourne still got a lot more money last year than any other part of the country.
Look, I just really think that we've got to do everything we can, even if there was politics played over this, to put that aside and put in place a system that works for everyone right across the country, no matter where you are in this country. This could happen tomorrow in Darwin or in Perth or Brisbane or, Adelaide or Hobart, anywhere. And so we don't want to be fighting between states about someone getting more or less. We want a robust system that's going to see us through this pandemic until that vaccine rollout is completed.
Sally McManus, thanks so much for your time tonight.
No worries, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.